Welcome back to Is It Still Good, the channel where we watch older films and let you know if they still hold up. Today, we're going to talk about a movie I just rewatched recently, last night, The Hills Have Eyes. But first, let's try to sell you guys some of my books. Okay, hopefully you guys bought some of my books, and we're going to talk about The Hills Have Eyes. This is not the 1970s original. We're going to talk about the remake, 2006, rated R. And it runs for 1 hour, 47 minutes. Very interesting film. I watched this because I was on a date, and my date was over. We were hanging out, and she suggested we watch a horror film. And The Hills Have Eyes was just something we picked out. I do remember seeing it in the past. I do remember it bothering me a great deal. That being said, I didn't remember enough about it to object to watching it again. Now that I've seen it, let's go ahead and give you my opinion. Now, this one was directed by Alexandre Aja, written very famously by Wes Craven. This stars Ted Levine, which I believe was Buffalo Bill, if I'm not mistaken, Kathleen Quinlan, and Dan Bird. And, I don't know. It was a very interesting watch, to say the least. This movie really pissed me off, basically. I don't know, guys. I mean, this movie really pissed me off in the way that, you know, it's not that there's like mutants hunting people and, you know, oh, the terrible things they did really upset me. I understand it's a horror film. I can prepare my mind for that. As awful as the atrocities were that they committed, I was actually more enraged by the quote-unquote good characters and their reactions to things. I just think made everything so much worse. For example, when each terrible thing would happen, the male actors in this would just react for far too long to each thing. Now, as anybody knows that's dealt with an emergency, first responders, people like that, you arrive on the scene, something bad's happening, you can't sit there and react to each little thing that happens. If somebody dies on the scene or something like that, there's still other victims. You have to make your rounds. You have to stop the bleeding here. You have to, you know, this person's in shock. This person's trying to run. You know, it's a mess. So if first responders, for example, acted in the way these characters did, it'd be absolute chaos out there every single night. You know what I mean? You have to be decisive. You have to know what's going on. If I were in this scenario, it would be called The Hills No Longer Have Eyes, because let me tell you, we're out there in the desert, it's wide open. One thing this movie does that kind of took me out of it a little bit is it gives these mutants the ability to disappear and reappear much like Batman would, and use the environment to sneak up on their, you know, prey and so on. I get that there's people that may have been affected by, you know, the testing of the bombs out in the desert, and it may have caused, you know, mutations throughout the generations. I totally understand that. Are there people who live out in mountains and places like that that would be happy to eat human flesh? Of course. They exist now. They're around, I'm sure. That being said, there's a reason why you don't see mutants in the UFC. These people are deformed. They have disabilities. It's really hard for them to move around, especially stealthily. Combat would not be their thing. It would be more like, you know, they let somebody get exhausted from walking in the desert and, you know, take opportunity there. But as far as like trapping and hunting the people and getting really good with that, I highly doubt it. Our main characters had weapons, which made me happy, although they didn't really use them to any effect, which made me upset. But Dan Bird, who plays Bobby, the young kid, I actually liked a lot. As far as Aaron Stanford, who plays Doug, he really pissed me off. I mean, Doug's supposed to be like next in charge as far as like Big Bob is now dead. He was burned horribly. Aaron Stanford sort of takes charge, and really it's Dan Bird, it's Bobby, you know, the one to look for. He's the only one with any acumen. That and the dog Beast. The dog Beast seems to know what's going on. Just a really tragic, awful, terrible thing to watch. I don't understand why people like stuff like this, to be honest. I am a horror writer myself. I just submitted my, I just submitted my first horror script. So be on the lookout, because it was approved by a director friend of mine. So I'm going to have a horror short in production here very soon, and I will post links to that when it's completed. So I am of the community, so to speak, and there are horror elements in my books for sure. That being said, this is just kind of gratuitous for me and upsetting. And I understand not everybody's, as tactically trained or, into hand-to-hand combat as I am. I totally get all that. And I don't expect everybody to perform in, a masterful way in an emergency scenario like this, especially one as traumatic and as terrible as this. That being said, we have to react when bad things happen. We have to defend our families. We have to move quickly and with purpose when things are going badly. Hated Doug so much that it really just took me out of the film. I believe that Doug's indecisiveness led to far more suffering than was needed. Just my opinion, but also just a unsettling, upsetting movie, just altering what reality would be in a desert. Like, it's wide open out there, guys. There's nowhere to hide. Nobody can sneak up on you unless you allow it. You put a little bass in your voice, you issue lawful commands, provided they're not mastered in the use of long guns. Which in that case, anybody would die. You're surviving the night. At minimum, you're surviving the night. Don't worry about mutants, guys. You'll be okay. If you're ever out in the desert and somebody starts running around first of all, if somebody's running around all mutated, you're going to see them. You're not going to look and they're going to be gone and hidden somewhere like some bush just shook a little. They're not Batman, And if you don't believe me, try to emulate Batman sometime with your perfectly healthy bodies, okay? And you're going to be goofy. You're going to give away your position. It's very, very difficult. Just the use of flashlights alone with a couple of firearms amongst the group, even handguns, I think you're totally, totally fine. Most of you stay inside. A couple guys stay on watch. You should do that anyway if you break down. Somebody should always be on watch anyway. This world's a big, dangerous place. Mutants aside, you got junkies, you got crackheads, you got, bad people. They're out there. You don't need mutants to make things worse. The world's already scary enough. That being said, they prey on the weak. They prey on the weak, they prey on the defenseless, the scattershot. You keep your wits about you. You stay cool. You put your shoulders back. You prepare for a wave of bullshit and you prepare to, answer it with some bullshit of your own. It will fuck right off. It's just a weird, upsetting movie, guys. I really hated it. Final ruling on this one. It's a horror film. It was well shot. It's very effective in being unsettling. Some of the kills are pretty wild. If you're into horror, I think you're going to like it, to be honest. But I have to average out how unbelievable it was with some of the shitty reactions from some of the characters. And again, I hate Doug so much, I'm going to bring it down to like a 6 out of 10 for me. It's a 6 out of 10 for me. If you're a big horror nut, you might say 7. But this movie doesn't really make a lot of top lists. I think the characters are just kind of stretched out in some unbelievable ways concerning their personalities. That's all. I think people would step up. If shit really starts hitting the fan like this, family members are dying, we're going to figure it out. Human beings have it in our DNA memory to defend our own. And it will come out even if you're a passive person, even if you're Doug. You're going to wake right up and you're going to figure it out. And eventually by the end he does, but it's just far too late for everybody. Also, doesn't his baby take like a really bad tumble and smack her head on rocks? Like, how is that baby okay? I don't get it. Weird film, guys. Not my favorite. 6 out of 10. That's it for this week. Stay tuned next week. We're going to talk about Silence of the Lambs. You guys know I love that film, but a couple of revelations I had on the rewatch may surprise you. So I will see you next week on Is It Still Good?
Ha 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 ha!